conversation. Chapstick covering on them crusty lips.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Crusty Lips. If this is your first time joining us, hello. Welcome. My name is Max. I go by Chapstick. And yeah, welcome back. Today, I want to mention before we get rolling, this episode is sponsored by Aloe Vera and rubber bands. So stay tuned at the end. We're going to have a little message from them. Today, listen, there's a lot to talk about. Last week, I don't want to wear these headphones. Sorry. Hit the mic real quick. Last week, yeah, I had COVID. If you tuned into that, pretty bad. It was pretty awful. It honestly one of the sickest I've felt in a long time, and happy to be done with it now. But it was grueling, man. And I think I was lucky as well with not having like the most severe symptoms ever. But I did get railed a little bit. It's one side effect that I did have that I'm still kind of dealing with. Everything smells like ketchup. I mean, literally everything has a very distinct, like vinegary, sort of sweet, ketchup-y smell that I can't get rid of, and that does translate to taste somewhat. But it's, and I've noticed this happen before outside of just COVID. Like I've had a cold before, and I've gotten that same sort of weird ketchup-y smelling thing. So I don't know what that's about, but still getting over that. I went to the grocery store at one point during the week because I was just craving orange juice. Maybe it was my body telling me that I need vitamin C or something, but I went, got a big jug of orange juice, cracked that open on the way home, and it tasted like straight vinegar, like straight ketchup, and I could not drink it for the next couple days because it was just awful. But yeah, maybe I'm crazy. I don't know if I'm the only person that gets that, but that is the aftermath. Other than that, man, it's been an eventful week. I finally tested negative, so I was able to go out in public and see people and see my friends, which was fantastic. It felt very weird, very strange being out in public again, but tested negative, so I guess I was good to do so. It's kind of funny. I feel like being locked away in my room for as long as I wasn't so bad because I'm a bit of a homebody anyways, and I feel like I was able to kind of just be used to hanging out here by myself and wasting time. So there's a certain, like, I guess not anxiety, but I feel a little bit uneasy seeing people in public now. Like I don't know how to act around people because I've been secluded for a minute. But no, I'm glad to be back at it. I did an open mic on Thursday. Thursday the 20... Well, what is today? Today's the 29th, which is Saturday. So Thursday the 27th? Is that add up? I think so. It was super fun. Shouts out Stube 8, and I'm super glad that I was able to test negative in time to do that. I'd been looking forward to this open mic for a long time because I've made it a goal while I'm here in Europe to just try and just do as many shows and open mics and things like that as I can. And eventually, hopefully, get to doing a show in Berlin and hopefully Paris. But we'll see. And something I don't really know how to do and how to set up, but it's a goal nonetheless. So my plan is to go ahead and just do as many open mics as I can and get into the scene and meet people and and talk to them about, where can I book shows? Where can I talk to someone else who knows? Um, which has been going okay so far. Uh, First open mic I did here in Saarbrücken was at a pub called Old Murphy's, this Irish pub. And the guy that ran it, Jan, he's been helping me somewhat to book shows around. So I have a show at Stube 8 booked for April 28th, I think. I think that's the Thursday. Whatever Thursday is around that week in April. Um, Stoked for that. But he mentioned to me, he's also a musician. He mentioned to me that it's if I wanted to do shows in big cities like Berlin, Paris, then it would be important for me to start booking now so that I can do it while I'm still here in Europe, because it seems like a lot of it has been backed up from before the pandemic. And when the pandemic hit, a lot of shows got canceled. So or at least postponed. So now these shows that were postponed previously are filling up all the slots that are coming up. Not to mention, you know, whatever wave might come next. Who knows if these shows will even get to be played. So it's a little stressful. My goal, I guess, or my plan has been to just do these open mics and try and get like footage from them. That way I can contact bars and stuff, and kind of market myself like a little digital resume of like, yo, these are some open mics I did. I've had good feedback, yada yada. But man, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like when it comes to this whole music thing, when the times I've been successful in like actually getting shows have been when I've gone out and looked for them. Like no one comes up to me, or rarely do they come up to me and say like, "Hey, we got this show going on. Do you want to get on it?" It's mostly me having to hit people up and ask like, "Do you have time for me to do a set? Can I open?" Something like that. So I just kind of got into this mood recently of, well, I want to do these open mics so I can start meeting people in the circle of music around here, as small as that circle seems to be. Um, just because I feel like it's so much easier to talk to someone in person and then have them point me in the right direction. Like someone is going to know someone who is going to know something about booking shows here. And maybe if I post this, maybe someone out there knows something about booking shows and can help me out. But yeah, I feel like I've been slacking on the music, and maybe I have, maybe I haven't. I feel like I always feel like I'm slacking on the music, but there's not gonna move forward if you don't put one foot in front of the other and like make steps in that direction. So I'm trying, doing my best. Like I said, it's a weird hurdle to kind of jump over too, because obviously there's a language barrier, and I feel like in general, anytime I've tried to do pub shows, even back in Oregon, it's it's kind of different. Like the places I've lived for the past like 5 years haven't had substantial rap scenes. So on the one hand, I'm at the top of my field, really, right? Like there's no one else doing the type of music I'm doing. But on the other hand, like it's hard to tell if there's an appetite for the type of music that I'm doing. Um, so I guess I just got to keep moving on it. But that's what's going on as far as the music's concerned. I didn't have a chance to do any of the new music that I've been working on at the open mic. I was kind of rushed. It was a weird situation. The person that ran it, um, it was his first time emceeing, so it seemed like there were some kinks to be ironed out there, and I got bumped to last, so I was kind of frazzled and a little pissed off that I was last, and I ended up screwing up the first verse of a song. I ended up doing the second verse when I was supposed to do the first verse, and then told myself in my head, okay, I'll just I'll just flip them over. I'll do the first verse second after the chorus, but then I couldn't remember what the second verse was or the first verse, and it was a mess. But I was thinking about that. I guess in the past, I've always kind of strayed away from like showing new music that I haven't released at shows and open mics and that type of thing. Um, because it's not out. It's supposed to have this secretive allure to it. But recently, I've been kind of thinking about it more in a comedy sense, like the way that stand-ups test new material in front of audiences. I kind of curious to get people's reactions in a live setting. I think it's different with music though, to some extent, because in general, I feel like when I perform songs live, maybe it's just an instant gratification thing. Sorry. I'm for if you're just listening, I moved the camera on accident. Maybe it's just an instant gratification thing that I can see people's reactions and feel their reactions right when I'm performing, so I can tell if they like the song or not. But it seems like those reactions are different from how the streams play out on the different streaming platforms themselves. And I guess that's not something I really need to focus that hard on because my biggest song's got like 3,000 streams on it. But um, I'm curious. I'm I've been dead set on creating things that I'm proud of. Um, and in general, I don't feel like that's swayed. But it's a little disheartening, I will say, to have to like post something that I'm super like stoked on and proud of, and then for that to be the thing that kind of flops, and then something that I'm not super excited about does better than it. You know what I mean? I moral of the story is I kind of want to try testing new material in a live setting and feel that reaction, or at least feel how it feels to perform the song in front of people and be vulnerable in that way. One thing I've been trying to do at these open mics is read poetry before I start performing, and that's harder. That's more nerve wracking than singing my songs because the songs have structure. Like I know exactly how they're supposed to go, whereas reading the poems is kind of more vulnerable, more emotional, which I kind of fuck with. It's it's an interesting feeling. But anyway, like I said, lots to talk about today. Talked about booking shows in Germany, but I guess this self doubt that I was just talking about kind of leads into the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about, which is I'm weirdly on the fence about this whole podcasting thing. At to date, I have not posted a single one. Um, I think that will change because of many things. But so my friend Dana, good friend of mine who lives here in Germany with me, I mentioned to her that I've been thinking about doing a podcast and that I had some ideas of artwork for the podcast, like a cover and such, and different animations. And I was really just asking her what app she uses to do like her digital design on her iPad. Now I don't have an iPad or anything, but I do have an iPhone, which is what I'm filming on. And I was trying to come up with some doodles on there. But after I'd shared those ideas with her, she came back to me within, I want to say like 30 minutes. It might have been more like an hour or two. Regardless, pretty fucking quick turnaround. She came back with amazing artwork. Um, and it was like exactly what I had been envisioning. Uh, and so on that front, I kind of feel like, well, damn, I have to do this. Like I have to post it. Like people have to see this artwork. It's so cool. Um, but then self-doubt creeps in, and I know that's something everyone deals with, but it's weird in this sense. I go by Chapstick Radford when I post my music, specifically because I'm going to school for engineering, and I want to I want to get a job in engineering one day, hopefully, and sustain myself. And part of me feels like having my name associated with, a rapper myself, but it seems like maybe that's not like so marketable in the engineering world. Um, at the end of the day, that is who I am, and I don't need to shy away from it. But it seems like it might not necessarily be a leg up to have that be the first thing that comes up if someone looks my name up. So I've gone with Chapstick. However, I've been talking about doing this podcast for a long time, and with the name Crusty Lips, I love that name, and I'm excited to one day have people on here and chat with them, but can't do that until I've done this for myself. Like I need to prove to myself and to people that I can hold conversation, that I can make an interesting podcast, um, so that I could book the guests that I want to book. But there's a part of me that's kind of like all in my head about not wanting to be an internet personality, and wanting to have and maintain my own personal life, and not broadcasting my opinions on everything. Um, but to a certain extent, I love talking to people specifically about different things, and diving deep into conversation, and talking. And sometimes I feel like those conversations might be cool to share. Sometimes it's, who cares? It's a dumb conversation. But I don't know. I'm slowly easing myself into sort of convincing myself to release this. And a lot of the stuff I want to talk about is timely. Um, so it kind of wouldn't make sense if I released it later, chronologically speaking. Um, which actually leads right into one of the next things I wanted to talk about. But so last week, when I did record something, uh, I talked about the conflict in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, and I realize it's something I'm not super well versed in. Um, but I find it fascinating, this whole world politics thing, and this is kind of what I covered last time, is just having learned to appreciate the world from a different perspective than just my sort of shielded American perspective. Um, Not to say that I have this worldly, well-rounded perspective now, but it definitely is broader than it once was. Um, I feel like not much has changed other than uh, the way I look at it. There's been talks back and forth about the U.S. having to give like a formal response to Russia's demands, and from what I understand, it's just been kind of a stalemate. Not really. Uh, well, nothing's really been divulged. It's private correspondence, but um, it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. It's interesting though that most of the world has not removed their diplomats from that country, um, other than like Germany and the U.S. and I forget really exactly what countries, but um, it's interesting that Ukrainian authorities and media personnel have posted and been vocal um, about how the conversation has become more volatile than the situation is, and the fact that the U.S. withdrawing its diplomats from that country has kind of fueled uh, a little bit more of this hysteria and made the situation worse. It just it makes me worried about the world we live in right now. Just how quickly we all get whipped up into a frenzy about everything. Um, Not that this isn't a huge deal. I think it is, but it says something to me that that people get so whipped up, and I think that just goes to show how tense things are, and it's scary, man. But you know what? On a lighter note, I'm gonna go ahead and pause this real quick, give you a quick message from the sponsors, and then I'll come back and continue chatting. All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today's episode is brought to you by Aloe Vera and rubber bands. Now, for those of you that don't know, aloe vera is this cactus-like plant. It grows in hot and dry climates. It's usually cultivated in like subtropical regions around the world, including the southern border areas of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Now, historically, this plant has been used for like skin conditions and was thought to improve baldness and promote wound healing. It's really easy to grow, um, at least from what I understand. It's a succulent, and it grows out with these long spikes. And you cut these spikes off, open it up. It's got this jelly consistency on the inside that is used for many different things. It's applied both like topically onto your skin and orally. It's known to promote healing of acne, rashes, burns, like sunburns, skin toxicity, um, and the oral use has been known to promote weight loss and help with diabetes, hepatitis, and inflammatory bowel disease. Now, I grew up, we always had aloe vera in our yard, and it would be nice to just cut it open and rub it on sunburns and stuff. But if you aren't fortunate enough to have it growing where you're at, they sell it at the store in gels and stuff. And as I mentioned, you can apply it orally. And me personally, I actually find the juice very delicious. One of my favorite things to drink when I have a hangover is a little bit of aloe juice. And I don't know why that is, but I always crave it. And yeah, if you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend it. I like to water it down. It's a little sweet. But yeah, go ahead, pick yourself up some aloe vera today. Now, this episode is also brought to you by rubber bands. Now, rubber bands, also known as elastic bands, gummy bands, lackey bands. Um, these boys right here. Can you see? This is a rubber band ball I've been making out of rubber bands that I've taken off of green onions. Every time I buy green onions, it comes with rubber bands on them, or other produce come with rubber bands on them. I take the rubber bands off, put them into this little ball, and that's just one thing you can do with your rubber bands. Very fun, very surprisingly time consuming to put these little bands onto the ball. But basically, what they are, they're little loops of rubber. Basically, usually like ring shaped or oval shaped, and they're really just used to hold multiple objects together, whether that be vegetables or I've used rubber bands as like cable holders, hair ties, you name it. If you need something kind of elastic to squeeze things, rubber bands got your back. And if we expand to just elastic in general, I mean, like half your clothing has elastic in it, right? Like right here, that's stretchy. My underpants clinging to my juicy waist, quite useful there. We've got this elastic band that holds my sketchbook together. Very useful stuff. Also can be used for flinging, shooting at people. Rubber band guns. You ever heard of those? Pretty fun stuff. Now, they're usually made of like natural rubber, but usually like the big thick ones are typically made of some type of elastomer. And an elastomer is really a polymer that is able to deform more than, I don't know the scientific 100% definition, but it's able to deform and then regain its shape without like plastic deformation. Interestingly enough, if you take like a infrared like temperature reader type of thing, and you look at a rubber band when you stretch it and then fling it back, when you stretch it, it actually gets colder, and that has to do with the entropy of formation of that elastomer itself. Pretty interesting. I'm sure you can find a video of that somewhere else. Rubber bands, it really all began in 1923 when William H. Spencer, he obtained a few Goodyear inner tubes, the tire company, and he cut those bands by hand in his basement. And he decided to form this company, the Alice Rubber Company. From then on, you got hella people making rubber bands. Very useful stuff. Who knows where we'd be without them, really. If you look back on your life and think about all the times you wish you had a rubber band, but you didn't, all the time, So go ahead, go to the store maybe, or really just look at the ground. I found a couple of the rubber bands on this very rubber band ball just walking around town. So pretty easy to obtain, cheap little guys, endless fun right here. And I can't recommend them more. And we're back. So I don't know if I'm gonna make this like a weekly segment now, but I wanted to share some more weird German observations that I've made, or at least that I don't think I've talked about. Uh, People in elevators are so awkward, so awkward that there's okay. Here's how the interaction goes. If you're in an elevator with somebody, you walk into the elevator. Let's pretend you're in the elevator first, okay? I'm on the 8th floor. Let's say I get into the elevator and start heading down to the ground floor because I need to catch a bus, okay? It's okay, we get down to the 5th floor in this imaginary scenario, and someone walks on. Now, eye contact minimum. Hardly any, if ever. Um Minimum eye contact, maybe a nod, maybe a hello. But then you go the entire elevator ride saying absolutely nothing in complete silence until the end. I mean, literally avoiding eye contact, avoiding any sort of interaction. In the end, they always say tschüss, which means bye, basically, or ciao. And I just find it so awkward because, I mean, of course you've heard of the elevator pitch, right? Like it's a thing in the United States to, I guess it depends on the person. I feel like it's not weird to chat with someone in an elevator and say what's up. Whereas here it's like I feel like if I do bring up conversation with someone in an elevator, it better be a friend cuz if I don't know them, it seems like they're kind of put off by that, which I just think is so funny. Germans, maybe not just German, like the culture here is so subtly different in so many ways. When my parents came and visited me in Berlin, it was very funny going anywhere with my father because it made me realize how loud American people are compared to German people. Just him ordering food at a restaurant, I could hear him from outside, and I could see the people in the restaurant kind of react surprised and shocked. Excuse me, that that he was so loud about ordering, and he was trying to strike up conversation. They were just keeping to themselves. Um, Maybe the English had something to do with it, that he wasn't speaking German to them. But it's funny. I don't think they found it that funny, but I found it quite funny. Another thing I observed, or I've been observing, and I don't know if I don't, I don't know if I will post any of the podcasts I've recorded before this. So if I do end up posting it, and you've already heard this, sorry, but people park on the sidewalks here. It's very weird, very nonchalantly too. Like you'll see cars with one wheel all the way up on the curb and the other wheel down on the street. I gotta imagine it's not good for the suspension, but it's very normal. Like I'll see cars in front of restaurants, they'll pull up and pull completely onto the sidewalk to unload and bring things into the restaurant and then drive away. It's the weirdest thing. And no one reacts like, what is this guy doing? It's a crazy man. Nah, it's totally normal. Very, very strange. But I think I'll try and at least every now and then bring some more observations into the conversation here. I have been trying to go around and film all the weird German words I can find around here. Not weird, but words that are spelled out in German in ways that I think an American would pronounce funnily. Like there's a meme going around. It was "Wir suchen dich," and any Germans listening, I apologize for my awful pronunciation, but "Wir suchen dich" kind of means like we're looking for you. Like it's basically like a we're hiring sign, but it's spelled in English WIRSUCHENDICH. So in American, you would pronounce it "we're sucking dick," and so there's a meme going around with like maybe I'll put it up on the screen, but it's like McDonald's sign saying basically we're hiring. Good stuff. So I've been trying to go around and film little like clips of words I find funny around town, and I want to compile them into just a video of a bunch of stupid American pronunciations, because I think it'd be funny and I think it would entertain me, so I'm gonna do it, okay? Well, the next thing I wanted to talk about is not so interesting. Well, very, very interesting. Let me take that back. Not so lighthearted, in my opinion, but something I think is really important to talk about for me. So, in the news this week, we have Neil Young and Joe Biden. They got beef. They got beef going right now. And if you haven't heard, I don't know where you've been, but I'll give a little short explanation. Basically, we got homie Joe out there, and he's having people on his podcast like what's his name? Robert Malone, I think. Dr. Robert Malone. I hope it's Robert. You know what? Hold on. We have a computer right there. And I don't want to look like a silly goose. Dr. Malone. Robert. Sweet. All right. Joe has his boy Robert Malone on, and other doctors and controversial people. Robert Malone was someone who was involved in the invention of mRNA technology, which is why he's, in this conversation whatsoever. the issue is Robert Malone says some pretty controversial things regarding the mRNA vaccine and regarding booster shots and everything. And Joe Rogan platforms him, right? Like, he gives him a place to speak. Now, this Robert guy has been uh, effectively canceled. He's been pulled off Twitter, pulled off LinkedIn, pulled off all these social media sites. His um, articles that contain his work are being pulled off the internet, and because there's a lot of like um, backlash to the things he's saying about the vaccine. And I think most of that is because, I mean, I watched the whole Joe Rogan interview, at least. Um, he advocates not taking the a booster, or at least he cautions heavily against it. And okay, so we'll keep my synopsis kind of short. So he advocates against it, and Neil Young basically has come out and said something along the lines of Spotify can have Joe Rogan or Neil Young. They can't have both because Neil is against the spreading of misinformation, um, and it's dangerous, and he disagrees with it. And so, effectively, what Spotify said was, "All right, see ya. Hope you come back soon." So they stripped his stuff off Spotify. And here's kind of where I lie, how I see it. First of all, I want to say I think it's really important that artists are able to voice their opinions about things, and I think it's good that Neil was able to stand up and say, you know what, I don't want my music associated with this company because you know we there's a difference of opinion here, and I don't agree with the stance the company's taking, and I don't want to be associated. I think that's his decision, and I think artists. I think it brings up sort of a conversation about how much power artists should have over their masters and over how their music is streamed, and um, for that reason, I'm happy for this controversy. However, what I have a problem with is this blanket statement. Because Neil hasn't, as far as I know, and I did look into this beforehand, to an extent. There's no claim of what this misinformation is. Okay, it's a blanket statement of Joe Rogan is spreading misinformation, and this ultimatum of you can have Young or Rogan, you can't have both. It gets into censorship, right? And what information can be put out to the public. And I think that's where it gets extremely dangerous. Because if Spotify goes in and says, you know what, yeah, we're going to side with Neil and we're going to take Joe Rogan off of Spotify. First of all, it ain't going to happen. Okay? Joe Rogan is the most popular and presumably most profitable podcast in the world. Not to mention one of Spotify's biggest deals ever. So he's not going anywhere. But I think the danger here is, and I don't know how. I think the danger here is that people feel entitled to deplatform. You know, I think it's a very dangerous game. when one group of people can decide what information can be discussed, can be shared. You know, fucking Trump. Trump got taken off Twitter. And maybe this is controversial, but I think that was one of the best things that happened to him because he left the public consciousness, essentially. People forgot about how bad Trump was, how bad life was with Trump as president. He was silent. He was removed from our public perception. And now the public focuses on Joe Biden and how bad his presidency has been so far and all of his mistakes and shortcomings. And then Trump comes back, does a rally, and mentions being pro-vax. Talks about how the vaccine was an accomplishment of his administration. And you see so much, positive response to that. And all it took was people forgetting about him for a while and then him standing back and saying, you know what? Like 85% of the country has at least one shot. I think I know where my supporters would be. All I need to do is tell them, hey, I did that vaccine. I saved all these lives. I think this deep platforming thing is scary. If Spotify bends and says, yeah, we're going to take Joe Rogan off, then that opens the door for so much more deplatforming and control of information. I think there's something fundamentally scary that information is diffused through corporations and effectively through money. Right? So all the information you get on the media, on the news, is funded by somebody, right? There's commercials between it. And that's what pays for these people's salaries. And in order to play those commercials, you can't put too much information on the TV. You can't explain yourself. If you get something wrong on the news, it's not like you hear reporters double back and say, you know what, we got this wrong. So I think these long form podcasts are extremely important. And what worries me with the whole Neil Young situation is that there's no claim to, here's the statement that I have a problem with. This is the misinformation I'm talking about. And with the blanket statement, it's what is that solving? You're just saying, yeah, Joe Rogan's lying about this. But okay, did you watch the thing? Like, it's like 4 hours long. It's not all lies. There's quite a bit of truth in there. That's fact checked live during the podcast. And I'm not saying everything they said is 100% factual. I don't know. I'm not a medical professional, but I'm someone who can think for themselves and who appreciates having the truth at my fingertips. And I don't need to be force-fed the truth by whatever authority decides, it has the truth. I think I should have the right to rummage through information for myself and make that decision. And I think it's irresponsible to deplatform. Now, I've heard arguments of people saying, like, Joe Rogan has a massive audience and he's responsible for, if he's spreading misinformation, then he's spreading misinformation to an entire massive audience. But the issue I have with that is two things. One, I think Joe is one of the more, what's the right word? I think his heart's in the right place. I don't think there's malicious intent to any of what he's saying. I think he has guests on that he thinks would be of interest and of valuable conversation. And in the case of this Malone guy, he's been deplatformed on everything for telling. Listen, I don't know how much of it's true or not. There's a lot of bureaucratic politics that goes on with all of this stuff. And if you listen to the podcast, you'll see that it obviously each side of the story have different dogs in the fight, right? He's got his reputation that's been destroyed. But then again, you've got the other side of Fauci, who's been involved with every major pandemic and epidemic for the last, like, what, 60 years? No, can't be. A last significant amount of time. Once again, I don't claim to be an expert on anything. So the second part is that Joe Rogan's got this massive audience, and people are worried that him spreading misinformation, he's responsible for this audience and making sure that he's well read and knowledgeable about these topics and spreading the correct information to them. I disagree fundamentally with that statement. And I'll tell you why. Like, I'm not trying to give Joe Rogan any more credit. I don't think he's an expert on any of this either, right? He's having people on to talk about it that he finds credible, or maybe not. I think what's fundamentally wrong about that statement is it doesn't give credit to the listener. It assumes that the listener is just going to accept what is told and move on and not question it. And I think there's something wrong with that, because I think we need to trust that people are able to decipher information for themselves. I don't think Joe Rogan is responsible for his audience. I think that undermines you're undermining the intelligence of his audience. People can think for themselves. People can make decisions. And if they're not presented with, both and all sides of an argument and all the valid information that comes to play, then they can't make meaningful decisions. And that's dangerous. And that's what makes deplatforming so dangerous, is that if you take away any sort of dissent, then effectively one side gets to control what everyone thinks. Right? And I think that's very dangerous, because look, you've got this news media. That's an oxymoron, isn't it? News media. It's entertainment. It's not to bring you the facts of the news. It's to get you hooked. It's to get you scared so that you come back. Because the world is a horror story right now. And if you don't watch the news, then you don't know where the boogeyman is, where the monster is. You're going to get killed. It's meant to trap you in, right? And effectively, it's like one side, or not one side, because I don't think it's necessarily just a polar issue. It's one authority gets to control what is understood by the rest of the population. And I think that's dangerous. I think people need to be able to interpret information for themselves. I think what scares me most about all of it is this fear mongering, this mob mentality we got going on, and how polar everything is. Because all it takes is, people are just looking for the answers, right? People just want to stay alive. I think at the end of the day, we all have that in common. We're all, at least at the beginning, we were pretty scared of this pandemic. I think most of us still have a level of fear towards it, and most of us just want to do what's best for us and everyone else. And I think in this world of uncertainty, people cling on to uh, charisma and beacons of hope, and inherently people that can give them answers. And maybe that is sort of dangerous if someone comes along and is spreading misinformation. However, you who could be the authority on what information gets to be shared? I think fundamentally, if anyone is making that decision, it's a dangerous decision. And listen, I don't know shit. I'm a 22-year-old kid studying abroad right now. But let me tell you, it's a weird time to be growing up. And kind of a scary time. But I don't know, man. If I could give anyone any advice, it's just think for yourself. And I don't think it all needs to be so hyper political. I think it's important to look for the similarities between us all, and kind of put yourself in other people's shoes. Realize that at the end of the day, we all kind of want what's best for us and our families and loved ones and friends. There's light at the end of the tunnel, but I don't know how long the tunnel is. And it's weird. I don't know how far I can take this tunnel analogy. It's weird viewing this tunnel from a different country. I think to a certain extent, the world is in this tunnel together, but I'm scared for my country, and I think memories are short, and I think especially my country doesn't really know the pain of what can come from this situation necessarily, like the country I'm currently living in, because it seems like people's attitudes are kind of different fundamentally when it comes to that. On a different note, I walked like 6 miles today. Pretty good day, honestly. I let's see. I'll refrain from names. I have been pretty excited because I planned a date with this lovely lady. However, I got COVID, so I had to cancel that date, and I was really bummed about it because I was pretty into her. But we rescheduled that date for today and walked around with coffee and walked and walked and walked. And it's been a while since I've walked so long, since to the point that my legs hurt. But it was cool to explore around Saarbrücken a little bit more. I found an area that I had not seen before, which is cool. Walking along the river. I wonder if anyone listening to this is in Saarbrücken. Maybe just my American friends that are here with me. Shouts out to y'all if you're listening. You've gotten through a lot of it, so I appreciate that. I wonder if anyone's even listening to this. I think to a certain extent, this is like a weird, like quasi therapy session for myself, just getting to talk to a camera. But listen, who knows? I'm starting to convince myself that I'm gonna actually post it one day. I really admire a podcaster named Ali Makovsky. I think that's how you pronounce her name. She's a comedian, but I like her podcast a lot, and it's kind of similar, I feel, to this, where she just kind of talks about her life and things that are going on. Maybe not so political as I've made it a couple times, and I hope I don't have to eat my words. I hope some of the things I've said don't get me in trouble. But I guess that's the world we're living in these days. I was listening to her podcast today, and I think it'd been out for like a week, and it had like 2,000 views on it and like 100 comments. And I just thought to myself, like, yo, those are numbers I think I could pull. Well, I don't know. I haven't posted anything yet. But as far as streaming, I got 3,000 on one song, which I think is pretty good. But it's like, those are achievable numbers. What do numbers matter? They're just numbers. But anyway, I think for me, what I like about podcasts, listening to them, is sometimes I like to just have like sound droning on in the background that I can tune in, tune out of, and listen to while I'm cooking or walking around town, doing errands and stuff. But to a certain extent, I really appreciate like the long format of podcasting, because it almost feels like you're friends with the person that you're listening to. Like you get to know them better to a certain extent. And then that brings me back to my anxiety of, do I want to post this podcast? I'm on the fence about it. Do I want people to know my personality? Do I want to be an internet thing, an entity? Are we all going to live in the metaverse in the future anyways? So does it not matter? Am I just getting ahead of the curve? Do I need to start buying metaverse real estate? Do I need to start investing in NFTs? Questions, man. But on that note of questions, if you got any, go ahead, comment them down below. I could use more topics. So if you have things that I could talk about, you want to hear me talk about, please feel free to post those. Guest suggestions, all that stuff. As I mentioned before in the beginning, if you're in Germany and you can understand what I'm saying, and you can help me out booking shows, that would be wonderful. Please go ahead, check out my music on Spotify and Apple Music and wherever you listen to music. I go by Chapstick Radford. I got 2 EPs and a single out, so go ahead, give those a listen, share them with your friends, share this podcast if you liked it and you got this far. And if you did get this far, like I said, give it a like, maybe subscribe. And I love you. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.
Salivation, making conversation. Chapstick covering on them crusty lips.